We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we record this podcast and pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise their ongoing connection to land, waters and culture. We recognise that sovereignty was never ceded.
The case of Leongatha's Erin Patterson, who was recently convicted of murdering 3 relatives with a deadly mushroom meal, captured headlines around the world.
I'm devastated. I love them.
But did you know an even more prodigious killer lived in the same small Victorian farming community in the 1930s? Join Leongatha journalist Matt Dunn and special guests including author Katherine Kovacic and former Victoria Police Detective Narelle Fraser as they unearth the chilling story of serial killer Arnold Sodeman on Sodeman, the Schoolgirl Strangler. Episode 5. June.
It's all fitting together.
Yep.
We've got 2 sightings of a guy with a little girl in a white dress, and now we know that what looked like carrying was actually sitting on the bicycle.
I think he realised that the game was up with June. I mean, he'd had people... I thought it was actually a completely different interview and a really good interview with June as opposed to Ethel.
This episode contains adult themes. Listener discretion is advised. On a warm December evening in 1935, 6-year-old June Rushmer vanished from a local Leongatha park, her disappearance triggering a wave of fear and heartbreak. The next day, her body was discovered on a vacant block. She'd been bound, gagged and strangled. The brutality of the crime shocked the community. No one was in any doubt of the link between the murder of Hazel Wilson at Inverloch 11 months earlier and this new outrage. It was just under 27 kilometres or 16 miles between the 2 towns. And with the advent of cars, it was an easy distance to travel. Back in 1935, the site on Hughes Street, Leongatha, would have been close to the train line. The train no longer comes to Leongatha, so it's close today to the Great Southern Rail Trail, a mecca for walkers and cyclists. Even now, there are a few houses nearby. I meet with the author of The Schoolgirl Strangler, Katherine Kovacic, near where June's body was discovered.
And June, she's 6 years old. She's a really bubbly little kid. Everybody knows June. She's trustworthy. They can send her on little errands, do a little bit of shopping. But she talks to people. People know her. She loves getting dinks on bicycles. She loves getting a ride in the baker's cart or someone's got a car, that she knows them. She'll flag them down, give me a lift into town centre, and then she'll walk home. So people know June. She's very outgoing. Her father would say later, though, that vivaciousness, that outgoingness would not overcome her discretion. So again, we have that sort of separation between going with someone she wouldn't know, someone who looked like a tramp or looked disreputable. That they felt that was a line she wouldn't cross. Even if they said, come for a ride in my car, come for a ride in the cart, if they looked a bit suspicious, they thought June still knew enough at 6 years old to know that was a line you wouldn't cross. But yeah, she's very friendly. There's lots of kids in this community. The family's in a busy part of town, and it's Sunday afternoon, 11 months after Ethel, literally 11 months to the day, December 1st, sunny Sunday afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon. Family's been having a lazy time, but it's time to go to the park with your friends.
Given the friendliness of the Leongatha township and June's own gregarious nature, she would not have perceived a potential danger. Sodeman may have had another connection to June, for there's evidence, Katherine said, that the Sodemans and the Rushmers may have lived in the same rental property for a time. So June would have been maybe 2 years old or
2 or
something
3,
like that, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, you'd imagine that he's got some sort of connection to her where, he's got a bit of a rapport with her, and it just makes it that much easier.
And don't forget, they've got their own little girl, Joan, who would have been, 5 about then?
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah, 28-5. So yeah, so presumably she and June Rushmer would have played. So there's another connection there, you know.
And I guess they all would have I imagine they all would have gathered at the park and...
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Meters up the street to play with their friends.
Mm.
You know, on a Sunday afternoon when, you know, she's going to walk past neighbours' houses, the neighbours will probably wave and say hello because they'll be out in their gardens or sitting on their verandas. You know, what's the problem? And this is something that she's probably done every weekend, you know, all through summer. She's been off to play with their friends in that park. So, yeah.
And, I mean, it's a small town. It's not a very big town these days, but I think we're about 6,500 now, but I think back then it was only a bit over 2,000.
That's right, yep.
Sodeman had been there with his wife and daughter in Leongatha for, well, at least a couple of years.
Yes.
I dare say there was no sense of anxiety talking to him because he was just another member of the community.
Yep, so certainly, you know, later on there'd be a couple of local people who were kids at the time who would say we thought he was creepy. You know, old Sodeman, he was the creepy guy. But, you know, there's always, I guess there's always almost someone like that. Yeah, the grumpy old man or the grumpy old lady in every community that the kids, for whatever reason in the kids' head, becomes, you know, the local creepy person. And certainly the parents didn't have any issue with him, you know. You know, people had boarded with people when they'd first moved to town. Again, we said everyone knew everybody, and when we come to sort of, you know, Sodeman discussing his movements on the night in question, he was dropping in on lots of different people, and and that was quite normal. They were like, yep, you know, he called around, we saw him, or we saw him in the pub, whatever. That was normal. So there was certainly no alarm bells surrounding him in that community.
Yeah. Indeed, June, an unsuspecting 6-year-old, was happy enough to take a dink on Sodeman's bike. I mean, the story is, and I think it gets confirmed later on by Sodeman himself, she was being dinked.
That's right, sitting on the handlebars of his bicycle.
Yep. Okay. From where he picked her up on Roughhead Street, it would have been an easy downhill roll. Former detective Narelle Fraser believes that Sodeman preyed upon June's innocence.
It's just fun. And he's, you know, pretty obviously very confident with June. And June's a little girl that, you know, loves fun. And she'll just apparently, you know, she'd talk to anyone like most 6-year-olds would. But it's just fun. And I think it, just getting on the handlebars, it was... He just had the perfect... Unfortunately, he had the perfect little victim. It'd be like, woohoo! You know, I can just imagine it myself. But it'd be fun. She wouldn't have had a care in the world. And who would have thought that she would be going to such a horrendous death? Like, you just can't imagine it.
So the moments leading up to Sodeman going away with June, what was the situation? Who was she hanging out with?
So she's in the park. She's gone particularly with her friend Shirley Steele.
Yep.
Shirley's dad is the park warden, so they live in the park grounds. But there's a lot of kids there, and there's playground equipment there. So once again, a bit like Mina Griffiths, they're just, it's a Sunday afternoon. They're having a great time.
Yeah. Now, as a local, looking back through your book, I think that park would have been within the current rec reserve.
That's it. Yep.
Where the football oval is, where the swimming pool is. So there was a permanent residence there.
Yes.
Yep.
There was the park keeper's house was within the park grounds then.
Yep. Okay. So her friend Shirley was the daughter of the guy.
That's right. Yep.
They're playing. June eventually says,
"Yeah, it's
gotta go."
About 7:30 at night. So that, I mean, again, that tells you what the community's like. That all the kids are together and all the parents know the kids are in the park, so no one's particularly fussed. 7 o'clock, 7:30 comes around. June's like, "Right, time for me to go home." And the big park gates, are the park gates still there, Matt?
The park gates are still
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So one of the other kids, a 12-year-old who was also there,
Yep.
watches June walk out the park gates and turn towards home. She's on her own. She sees her disappear down the street.
Yeah.
And that's the last she's seen.
Okay. So June wanders off. We're expecting she's going to go home.
150 metres straight down the road.
Wow. Along the way, she's met by Sodeman on his bike.
Yeah. Now, the thing that happens, of course, is that no one realises that she's missing at first. It's one of those just really messed up things that happens, that both of the parents have errands to run. Her mum's off to church, and her dad and her brother are going into town to just post some letters. So, for whatever reason, each parent thinks that June's met up with the other one.
Yeah.
And so no one's worried once again. And it's not until her mum arrives home at 9 o'clock that night that they realise that she's missing. So now we've got this two and a half hour gap between when she was last seen and when they realise that she's missing. And I think that's when they're going to start thinking about envelopes straight away.
Yeah. So when that realisation hits, what's the response?
Straight out, start with the neighbours, canvassing the neighbourhood. Have you seen her? Have you seen her? No one's seen her since she first went out at 2:30 that afternoon. So then they're straight onto the police, and she's missing, and the whole town's out, within an hour.
Yeah.
Everyone is out looking for June.
Okay. So the search goes through the night.
Yes.
Much like other searches
again,
in this
people
story.
On foot, people in cars, torches. They're calling for her. They're shining lights into shrubbery. They're looking everywhere.
Yeah. So the next day, we relaunch our investigation.
Yep, that's right.
What do we find?
I think it's continuing. So one of the young men who's been searching all night, this is what they're doing. The ladies are making sandwiches and tea. He straggles in about 7:30, grabs a sandwich, cup of tea, and he's back out again.
Yep.
It starts to rain. There's a huge downpour of rain. He's not giving up. He's coming back along ground that's already been, people have driven along it at night, they've been shining torches, but he's decided this is where he's going to, and he's in and out of the shrubbery. He's literally beating the bushes looking for anything. 9:30, he sees legs sticking out of some shrubbery.
And the awful thing is, her own father had passed this site.
That's right.
Earlier, but it was dark and
middle of the night. He was in a car with a police officer, and they were shining the headlights. They were just shining lights in the shrubbery, but the scrub there was too dense for them to see anything. It just that person on foot, literally beating his way through the bushes, that he came across her there, in a tiny little clearing.
And so our man William Watson sees the foot.
Yes.
Then sees what else?
Yes, he checks. He sees that it's June. Again, she's face down.
Yeah.
Underwear, her own belt used to tie her hands and feet. And he just goes to get help. The nearest house, the McPherson farm, to get on the phone and to raise the alarm that she's been found.
So, McPherson farm up there?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Which is, maybe I won't identify it, but yeah.
For Mervis Diamond Importers, this is Ronnie Mervis. Before you tie the knot, you should explore our Veragio engagement and wedding rings. The styles are out of this world with mind-blowing design options. Veragio is the only designer who allows you to personalize your ring exactly the way you want it. The sky is the limit. Each ring is crafted to the highest quality. When you pair your Veragio ring with the unmatched beauty of a world-famous Mervis diamond, you have a ring which is truly like no other. It will be the talk of the town. Your friends will be envious. Mervis means more diamonds, better quality, and the most value. And with easy Mervis financing, you can get her dream diamond now. Don't wait. To shop our mouth-watering Mervis diamonds and the largest selection of Veragio bridal jewelry in the tri-state area, visit us online at mervisdiamond.com or call 800-HER-LOVE. Again, that's mervisdiamond.com or 800-HER-LOVE. Mervis Diamond Importers, your official Veragio jeweller.
The police response again, and gee,
it's bigger this time.
I bet it's bigger. Yeah, and the public scrutiny must have been quite intense.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think anyone would be thinking it's not the guy who did the murder in Inverloch.
It has to be the same guy.
Probably the one who did Mina Griffiths. What the hell's going on?
That's right. I think even before the details of how June had been positioned and bound, you've just got to think another little girl, same area, 11 months apart. It's got to be the same guy.
Yeah.
So this time we get a bunch of detectives coming down straight away, and we get a police officer with a dog to track. We get 2 Indigenous trackers. Dr. Mollinson, the pathologist, is on board, and they're all here by midday. They're here within hours. So literally, as soon as that call went through to Melbourne, they're out the door and in a car. They're not wasting any time.
Yeah.
It's what you'd hope and expect, how detectives would respond to a child's murder. To be honest, I think it sort of shows that they were a lot more. They weren't tired out old detectives, with all due respect, like the others might have been. And also the scene, it was treated completely differently. Ensuring that it wasn't contaminated and June's body was found and not disturbed, like all that sort of stuff. It's pretty standard procedure, which, as I think I alluded to a few times, I think laziness crept into a lot of the detectives and what they were dealing with the other kids, which is, I don't know how you could do that with the murder of a little kid. You can't afford to cut corners. You can't afford to be lazy. Like, this is somebody's little kid, like, what if it was their kid? Not that you'd wish that on anyone, but gee, you'd hope the response would be better than, poor old Ethel's and Nina's and, anyway.
So June is taken off to the Leongatha courthouse, or a room behind the courthouse, which serves as a mortuary. The police, were they saying anything publicly? Like, were they saying, we do believe this is the guy who...
At this stage, no. At this stage, there's the usual...
Speculation.
Where we've got the aspect of, could it be someone, but she's this outgoing kid who, if someone was going past with a car or a cart that you could go for a ride on, that's what she liked to do. So there's that aspect of it. Her parents are saying she wouldn't have done this if it was... They specify a disreputable stranger. So, we've got that slight thing where they haven't said, no, she wouldn't go with a stranger. But, if they looked a bit dodgy, they would. But we've also got this thing, the police are casting a really wide net because we've got a lot of itinerant workers. So they're notified police stations within a 50-kilometre radius to be on the lookout for men, basically, men on their own, which is, pretty broad brush to draw. Which
pretty wide search.
Whether they've got any ideas or whether they are just, they're desperate to make, they've got to get this time. They can't, so they're doing, if they've got, it's mentioned numerous times, 3 high-powered cars at their disposals and a bunch of constables as well. So they're out to work camps, they're out to neighbouring towns and hamlets. They're looking at everything.
And what is the response from the public? What sort of information do they gather? Because I know there's a couple of guys who, like I said before, see the man on the bike. Dinking the girl. So Henry Money and Desmond Ryan.
Yep.
But there's
some discrepancies there.
There's discrepancies there.
Yeah.
But we kind of work out that actually they're probably on the same.
That was quite neat, yeah. So there were the usual sort of red herring stories about, some strange guy tried to give my son, halfpenny to go and buy some lollies. The usual sort of things that the police had to investigate, but that had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
And then, so we had these 2 boys, and this was really interesting because both of their stories tied in with the timeline of when June would have been heading home. We're talking about 7:45.
Yeah.
Now, young Henry Money, I think he was about 12, he said he'd seen a man in a dark suit carrying a girl in a white dress, and they were heading away from the recreation reserve where June had last been seen, so tying in and in the direction of where her body was found.
Yeah.
But then we had Desmond saying, well, I saw a guy giving a girl a dink on the front, on the handlebars of his bicycle, a little girl in a white dress, guy in a dark suit. Now, he knew June, but he was about 100 metres away, 80 to 100 metres, so he was too far away to be able to say if it was June. And so police were really interested in that because the track, as it was then, too rough for a car, but a bicycle was a real possibility. But then they found out that there was a local guy who often gave his own daughter, a ride on the handlebars of his bicycle. So they put that to one side to a degree. But then we got those two Indigenous trackers in, and they found bicycle tracks. Now, it was hard for them because we'd had that huge downpour the morning June's body was found.
Yeah.
The police dog was no help, which, should have been able to do something even with the downpour, but police dogs were very much in their infancy, and that was Constable Capuano who was handling the dog, and he was the one-man dog squad, and he was doing it all on his own bat at that stage, so no fault there.
Yeah.
And we would have also had the issue of police not understanding how dogs worked. They would have already trampled all over everything by that stage. But the Indigenous trackers came down. We had mention of an article of interest found in the shrubbery not far from June's body, but the Indigenous trackers found bicycle tracks that led towards where June's body was found, and then also led away. And that seemed to cause some consternation at first, which, but you have to leave the murder scene just as you have to arrive at a murder scene. So the fact that that was in a different direction, perhaps that again just pointed to someone local who knew their way around. So now we have potential child on the handlebars of a bicycle who could have been June, dressed the same way, and we have bicycle tracks leading to her murder scene. So this was actually looking like a tangible lead, and they actually started searching bicycles in the town, and they brought two in for more detailed investigation. They took a tyre tread from the ground, so presumably they were looking at the tyres on these bicycles to see if any of those treads matched.
Yeah.
One was a definite rule out, one was a that's interesting.
Yeah.
But they put that to one side. That we sort of get that little tidbit in the media, but they still haven't got anything definitive. People rode their bikes around town. So we've got that other guy with his daughter on the handlebars, and there's not going to be in 1935 in a country town a wide range of bicycle tyres that you can put on your bicycle.
No.
So we can imagine that there's a standard type pretty much, and not much variation within that. So
but the thing I found interesting was the description of Sodeman perhaps carrying June.
Yes. And that was neat, how they managed to reconcile what these two boys had seen, because they was obviously looking a bit confusing, and things weren't working. Then they took Henry, the younger one, and Desmond back to where they thought they'd seen this man. And the track actually sits up a little bit higher than where the boys. There's a sort of a little laneway and a fence. And Henry was only 12, and he was shorter. And from his perspective, it looked like someone was carrying the girl. But if you actually put him on higher ground, where Desmond was, and Desmond being taller, you could see a bicycle. So suddenly, this little girl who he thought was being carried could have been sitting on the handlebars, because you can imagine that if the man's got his hands on the handlebars, it looks like his arms are around that little girl. So suddenly it's all fitting together. We've got two sightings of a guy with a little girl in a white dress, and now we know that what looked like carrying was actually sitting on the bicycle.
The fact that they, again, it's pretty standard procedure, whether you've got two witnesses giving different descriptions, but just to take a witness to the scene and get them, where did you stand and what did you see from here? Like, that was, I was going to say a masterstroke, but it was also something that every detective should always think about, is taking a witness back to, if it's possible, back to a scene and getting them, if it's not too traumatic for them, getting them to go through what you saw, where you were standing, because that explained everything with the differences, didn't it, between Henry and Desmond. Yeah, I thought it was as I say, a masterstroke in one sense.
Unlike the other murders, there's no one really in the frame, though, is there?
No, not at all. Not at all. But it's really, and the interesting thing is this bicycle. This becomes the key that unlocks everything. Because while all this is going on in town and police are searching and days are passing, not like Ethel, we're still in that first week. But out at a work site, on the Dumbolk Road, there's a group of men who are working on the road, and one night they're sitting around their campfire. They're local guys, local towns, some of them from Leongatha, some of them from other towns, Melbourne North and what have you, but they're living out at this little work site. And one night they're having a chat, and the topic of the murder obviously comes up. They're local men, and someone brings up this story about the bicycle. And jokingly, one guy says to another, "Whew, thought I saw you on your bike in Leongatha that night." It's a light-hearted joke. The whole thing blows up. This guy's up, he's chucked his tea in the fire. "No, you damn well didn't. I wasn't there. It wasn't me." Stomps off. Everyone has a bit of a laugh. Maybe it was a little bit too close to the bone. This guy's got a young child himself. That was, not a good taste joke, really.
Yeah.
But for William Money, that's Henry's dad, William Money, it doesn't sit right. That was a really extreme reaction to that remark.
Gee, we've got some close connections, haven't we?
Yeah, and William had actually seen that particular guy with his bicycle on that Sunday night. He'd seen him himself.
Right.
And so now hearing that overreaction, he's just, no, something's not sitting right. It was so strange to him that he immediately contacted police and told them about this guy.
So, I imagine you'd have goosebumps and think, no. It would transpire that young Henry Money and his dad William would both play a part in Sodeman's eventual arrest, with Henry one of the boys who gave vital evidence about Sodeman dinking June on his bike, and William, a co-worker of Sodeman's, flagging the man's strange behaviour with police. He'd also seen Sodeman getting about on his bike the day that June was murdered. If I'd written a news headline back in the day, it would have been something like, "On the money, dynamic father-son duo nabs child killer." It would have been hyperbolic, but the Moneys would definitely play a big part in Sodeman's eventual downfall.
Really in the end, that was, I feel like, almost the piece of the puzzle that was missing. That young man just going to the police saying, "This is what's happened." That's something I want a lot of. There's a lot we can learn out of that. He actually went to the police and said what he felt and what he saw. I mean, I must admit, often you get the heave-ho from the police as well. Not often, but, you can. But it all all the pieces of the puzzle came together for little June.
They're out there like a shot. They're out there the next morning, 7 a.m.
I kind of imagine in past investigations they would have gone, meh.
Yeah, I think so. But this is tangible. We've got this bicycle is just bringing everything together, and presumably that might have been that bicycle of interest that they were keeping an eye on. So here's the guy now, and so they're out there at 7 a.m. We want you to come in into Leongatha for some questioning. He just said, "Yeah, all right." So back into the car, back down to the courthouse where they've set up their sort of temporary headquarters, and they start questioning.
And initially his response is pretty cool. He's doesn't seem too flustered. And now again, supposition of course, we don't know if he was, there was a bit of duress there.
Well, yeah, there's certainly that would subsequently come up that,
answer.
How long was he left alone in the room with one officer while the rest of you were off, quote unquote, having lunch or something.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that there's 3 detectives other than O'Keefe in the room with him, and the fact that those 3 go and speak to the Picton brothers.
Yep.
And so we've got O'Keefe left with Arnold, and if I read this right, he continued questioning him. Like, to me, that's highly unprofessional. I mean, he could have said anything. He could have, as in the detective could have bribed him. He could have done anything. The detective could have written anything down. Oh, I just, you know, I don't know if, I don't doubt that he did it, but I think the way they went about questioning him and the whole thing is very, very highly unprofessional. But, you know, these days it's highly unprofessional.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I imagine back in the day it was probably just the way it was done.
It was. And that's what I mean. I sound like I'm criticising them. Of course, I can, because looking back, it is just so wrong. But that's how they did it, you know? So I've got to move on from that.
Yeah.
But the thing here is that he has a very elaborate story, and he gives them, you know, lots of details about it. This time I went to get some potatoes. I was looking for a newspaper. This is really interesting. He wanted to borrow a newspaper from someone. So he, you know, had his bike, but he went to see these people. Oh, they've already passed their newspaper to someone else. So he goes off to see these farmers, the Pigden brothers. And he gets to their place, and according to him, they weren't in. They're still down milking. So he waits in their kitchen, as one does, I guess, you know, country town. Waits for them to come back. And when they come back, they've lent their paper to the neighbour already. So they have a cup of tea and blah, blah. You know, he goes off. Finally, you know, then he runs a couple of errands, gets his paper from the next door neighbour when he gets home, as it happens. And then he has to go and pack up his stuff to go back to the work camp the next morning. Right. But it's the Pigden brothers that are the unravelling point, because, you know, he says he was there at a certain time, and the police go, well, you know, they send some officers off to check. And the Pigdens say, well, yeah, he was here, he came round, we had a cup of tea, but it was about an hour later than he said. And so it's when those detectives come back, and that evidence is that what the Pigdens have said, it was an hour later, he asks to see their statement. They read it out and they give it to him. Yeah. And then they say, well, is there anything else you want to tell us?
It was at this point that Detectives Domenico and O'Keefe got the breakthrough they were looking for, with Sodeman confessing to his double life. It was the newly arrived Detective Domenico who scored the final win.
The whole trouble with you is you have too much knowledge, and it's your knowledge which has placed you where you are today. Tell Detective Sergeant O'Keefe the truth. If you don't like to tell it in front of the two of us, I'll leave the room. No. You can stay. She's not the only one. There are 3 others.
Who are they?
Ethel Belshaw, Hazel Wilson, and Mina Griffiths.
I would think that the way these detectives, the professionalism, the difference with these detectives compared to the other ones, it probably helped Sodeman in thinking these guys are pretty good. I think, you know, the gig's up, and I might tell them. I feel that a lot of it would have been to do with the detective's attitude and the realisation from Sodeman that they did their homework, and the fact that they then come back and go into the interview room and advise Sodeman, well. And this time they had actual evidence, you know, because it's in a signed statement. I think he probably realised these are the real deal, these detectives, and they were just very thorough and did what, you know, most detectives should do. You know, I just thought it was a completely different investigation, and they were not lazy. They were spot on.
Sodeman then told the detectives all about June's murder.
They put him in a car and they bring him down here and say, show us. You know, I picked her up here on my bicycle. We drove down here. She tried to run away. I grabbed her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I know Narelle will have theories about why he was so forthcoming. Yep. Have you got any sort of idea of why? I mean, was Was it a burden to him? Was he doing something for the good of society finally, and thinking, I got to get myself off the street, you know?
I don't think he was that magnanimous. I think probably he knew that this time they had him. You know, the talk of the bicycle, you know, that had come up at the camp, so he knew that there was a story about the bicycle. If they had seized his bike and were looking at it, we're getting into an era now where fingerprinting, you could take prints. So June's fingerprints could be on the handlebars of that bicycle too. And then when he's presented with his own story of, I was at the Pigdens at that time, and they're saying, no, you weren't. And the brother specifically said, I always look at the clock when we come in from dairying. And I came into the kitchen and he was there, and I looked at the clock and this was the time. So it was quite precise. So his story's unravelling around him. He's in this community where, you know, we already know that William Money out at the camp, I saw you on your bicycle, someone else saw you, those two boys saw you. So it feels like it's only a matter of time before it's all going to explode. And as you say, we don't know what sort of duress the cops were putting on him as well. But I think also with him, there's probably also an element of, I've gotten away with it for this long, so I'm going to tell you now how clever I am. I'm going to do this on my terms.
Wow.
The other jobs didn't do that they should have. But just, I feel like there's a lot that these detectives did right. You know, just little things like a tactic that we sometimes use, which works very well, is leaving a suspect in a room just to give them a little bit of time to sweat, to think about, you know, what's happened. And also just silence can be very, very powerful. And I don't think enough people understand the power of silence. Even when you're in an interview with somebody and you might ask a question and they don't answer it, you know, immediately, just to be quiet, it makes them think that maybe they're onto something. But also, if you just do a few ahas and just leave that silence, a lot of times, a lot of people, perpetrators, will feel like they have to fill that silence. And so they think, oh, they want me to talk more or tell them more, or it does your head in as a perpetrator. It does their head in. So just little things like that, leaving the room, that silence is so powerful. And also little things like Sodeman asked, didn't he ask, he wants to write a letter to his wife. You know, he's confessed. There might be detectives that think he's confessed. Let's take him to court. Let's get him remanded. But he wants to write a letter to his wife. So they allow that. But they also say to him, that's fine to do that, but you understand. And again, this is just being fair and honest. It's fine for you to do that, but that letter may become evidence. So they're not trying to pull the wool over his eyes. You know, they're being fair, professional, how detectives, how police should act. I just thought taking along the Indigenous trackers, you know, that's there's thinking outside the square, as we said before, about poor James. But there's also, like, I thought that was quite a good thing to take a tracker. It's just not closing your mind. You know, people might think, oh, an Indigenous tracker or a profiler, you know, oh, I don't know. Well, why not have it all? Why not try it? And it just shows you're being open-minded. So many people are so closed in their opinions and minds that they won't even think about that. I just thought they did a lot of really, really good things.
Is there anything you wanted to add?
I think the only other thing that we might add that perhaps speaks to his willingness to talk is that this Friday. We've already had June's funeral, which was a huge event for the community. You know, her mother broke down by the graveside. The whole town was there. But word has gotten out now. He's being questioned here in the courthouse. Word has gotten out in the community that they've made an arrest. It's market day in Leongatha, so there's a lot of people here. Yeah. People have started to gather outside the courthouse.
Yeah.
They know there's someone in there. They probably don't. Some people probably know, if word's gotten back from the work camp, they know that it's Sodeman that's being questioned. And this crowd's turning into a lynch mob. People are calling for, don't worry about the courts. We're going to handle this ourselves. The women in the community are out for blood too. They want this guy, and it got to the point where police literally had to hustle him out a side door, get him into a car, and whip him back to Melbourne. So I wonder if that's actually an element of him spilling his guts. Is that if he stayed there while this mob's going to come for him. Yeah. This community who trusted him, who welcomed him in, they're going to come for him. So I think there's that element too, that at least temporarily he's going to save his own skin.
Jeez. Do we? And I do remember reading it, but do we know how many people were there that day outside the courthouse?
It was said to have been at least 500. So that's a huge, that's a quarter of the community here. Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And there's a couple of pictures in the paper from that period where you can see, and even in a black and white newspaper reproduction, you can see the lines of tension in people's bodies. No one's standing there loosely. This is people are sort of leaning forward and shoulders are up, and it's an angry crowd. You can see that anger in the picture.
God. Yeah. Wow. What a betrayal. Oh, well, I'll tell you what. This is a weird sort of experience.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, like coming to the sites and kind of reliving it in a weird kind of almost ghostly kind of way. I don't know. It's strange.
It is. It's,
yeah. I feel like we're haunting something, or I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling. Lucky I can edit. The sad postscript to June's story was the devastation her death caused her parents, Cyril and Claudine, who would immediately return to their native England with son Claude at the conclusion of Sodeman's trial, not even waiting for sentencing. Penniless, the family would try its best to keep life and soul together, boarding with Claudine's parents while Cyril took whatever work he could find. But nothing was the same in the wake of the murder of the little golden flower of the family. Writing a letter to the townspeople of Leongatha, published in the Echo newspaper on December 11, 1935, Cyril reassured the readers that the failure to find our baby was not due to any lack of zeal on the part of the searchers. He thanked everyone for the solace and comfort of their ministrations in our tragic bereavement. Without those strong arms that upheld us throughout those harassing and dreadful days, we must have sunk into the depths of despair. We cannot say thank you for this great help that sustained us. It is so inadequate. We wish all to know that their sympathy and assistance was a very real help, and on behalf of my wife and my son and myself, I can assure these good Samaritans that our little one, so brutally snatched from our arms, will see that they reap their reward. Next week on Sodeman, the schoolgirl strangler.
A very perverse fusion of libido and power needs that's expressed in, sexual gratification and killing.
My proof listener and editorial assistant is A. Dunn. Thanks to Mark Drury for his introductory voiceover and theme music. Thanks too goes to Leongatha Lyric Theatre actors Dan Laurie for playing the parts of Detective Domenico and Sodeman, and Andrew Newton for playing the part of Detective O'Keefe. And to my wonderful guests, Katherine Kovacic and Narelle Fraser. Thanks for listening. See you next week.